Let me bring in now Labour's Shadow Foreign Secretary, Emily Thornberry. Emily, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, need to ask you about the big news of the day. Dominic Raab has announced that the government has teamed up with commercial airlines to form a new arrangement to rescue tens of thousands of Brits stranded abroad by coronavirus. However, we've had a caller on immediately after that announcement, stranded in Benin, who says he hasn't heard a peep from the government and has been told that he might be there for another 3 months. So it doesn't sound like they're doing enough to me.
Well, what they've done is they've announced some extra money, which they're going to use for chartering some flights, they say, and also for helping to subsidise the commercial carriers to bring some people home. But the problem is that there's absolutely no detail. And to a certain extent, they're really just saying the same thing as they have been since day one, that they're going to keep the airports open, that they'll use some charter flights if they need to, and they're going to work with commercial airlines. I mean, the guy in Benin is one person. I mean, I've had more than 1,000 emails. I went to the Foreign Office last week and I talked to them about the problems that people were facing. They agreed with me that there are large numbers of British nationals who are stuck in Australia, New Zealand, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. I think we should start with the areas where there are the largest numbers of people, and there isn't a specific answer to them at all. And I have people contacting me there's a family, for example, from Yorkshire, who went out after the flooding. There's a family of 6, including 2 grandparents, and they can't get home. And they've spoken to a commercial airline, and the only way they can get home is by spending £61,000 to get home. I mean, this is not on. These airlines are taking the mickey. There are no flights leaving Sylhet, which is where most British Bangladeshis have been to go and visit their families. How do they get home? Large numbers of people from Pakistan, and so many people have contacted me from India. So there really isn't an answer to those. I mean, we're hoping that there will be, but anyone watching Dominic Raab today won't really have been able to get any answers to their questions.
So has he not done enough then? Has he underperformed?
Well, so what's happened is that they've been dealing with this on a case-by-case basis, but there isn't really an answer on a case-by-case basis. We need to have changes to policy. And the policy should be, what they've done is they have, look, praise where praise is due. They have brought in some charters to bring people home from Peru. It's been a bit chaotic, but listen, people are getting home, and that's thanks to the British government, and good for them. I'm really pleased to hear that they've done that. But there are many other countries where they do need to be doing that. They need to be much more proactive than they have been. And we have been waiting and waiting for them to do so. And people are getting very, very anxious. Let's say I have another family where the man had an accident. He had to have an operation. He was supposed to be getting back on an ambulance flight. They coordinated it so that his wife went home on a commercial flight, and then the ambulance flight was cancelled. And this man is now in Goa. He's very ill and he can't get home, and his wife is no longer there. There isn't an answer in relation to people such as that. Now, I've had people contacting me who are stuck in hotel rooms, are not allowed out. They don't even know how they can get to the airport. They found it very difficult to get in touch with the Foreign Office or the British consulates around the world because they themselves are overwhelmed. The Foreign Office have increased the number of people answering the phones, but they haven't been able to increase the number of answers. So, what happens if your insurance has now run out and you're still stuck? What happens if you've bought a flight and the airline has cancelled it and given you a voucher and told you that you can leave sometime in May or June, and you've maxed out your credit card? How do you now survive in the country in which you're stuck?
Well, despite all of this, and despite lots of concern over the lack of tests, over unclear government advice, Labour, and obviously you're a very senior figure within Labour, seem reluctant to criticise the government at the moment. Do you think you're providing strong enough opposition during this crisis?
Well, the way that I've been approaching it is that I have been passing on all the cases that where people have contacted me, and I've told them what the problems are. I want them to be the best government they can be. I think that's the most responsible thing to do as an opposition at the moment is to try to help the government, deal with these problems. But
So
it
do
is
you
very
agree with this
frustrating.
definition of this being like wartime? Do you have to treat this like wartime and you actually have to try and help the government out?
Listen, I want to help the government out. I mean, never mind whether it's wartime or any other parallel. I want to help the government out. I want them to do this properly. I read these emails from these desperate people. I want the government to do the right thing. But what worries me is that they're doing too little and they're taking too long on this particular issue. As I say, it's important to praise them when they've done things that are right. I'm pleased that they've got this extra investment in which they're going to use to subsidise flights and to charter, but they haven't come out with any details as to what it's going to mean. And for all the people who are contacting me from India, I can't email them now and say, yes, there will be chartered flights now. The British government has agreed to it. Or people who are in Sylhet, because most British Bangladeshis come from Sylhet, where all the flights have been cancelled. I can't give them any answers now, and neither can anybody, presumably, at the Foreign Office helpline, where people will ring up and they will be told, hang on, hunker down, something will happen in the future, but there isn't an answer. So, it's been a number of weeks now, and as I say, one country, it's good, Peru has been good. We got people out of China, that was good, and there's been some work with Spain. But actually now we do need to look at where the principal areas are, where there are the most Brits who are stuck. And the Foreign Office agree with me. It's India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, New Zealand and Australia. And anyone, a Brit in any of those countries wanting answers from Dominic Raab today will not have heard them.
Do you worry that there's a leadership vacuum right now? Obviously, Boris Johnson, Matt Hancock out of action, both suffering from COVID-19. You have Chris Whitty and Dominic Cummings, we learn, in self-isolation as well. Who's actually running the government right now?
Well, I mean, I presume that it's the Prime Minister is running the government and he is working from home, and luckily his home is number 10. But what I want from the government is clear leadership. Whoever it is that's making the decisions, make the decisions and communicate it in a clear way, because I think the British people want to do the right thing. But it needs to be clear what it is that the government is doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and making sure that we all work together. So in my brief, in the Foreign Office brief, I'm more than happy to collect information for the Foreign Office, pass it on to the Foreign Office, but I expect them to take some leadership afterwards. I'm not in a position to be able to charter the flights, but the Foreign Office is, and the Foreign Office should be doing it.
Do you think they should have practiced social distancing in the same way they're telling the public to?
Well, I'm surprised if they haven't exercising social distancing. You would expect.
Well, we saw the pictures, didn't we, of the
so.
Prime Minister surrounded by people in the House, at the press conferences. The public's being told right now that we've got to keep 2 meters away from everyone. And Boris Johnson didn't do it. And as a result, he's come down with COVID-19.
Well, we don't know where he got it from.
That's
to be
true.
fair, we don't know, at what stage. And some of the pictures perhaps were, from a few weeks ago. I mean, there will be a question with hindsight about at what stage we introduced social distancing and whether we should have done it earlier. But the point is, we now are where we are, and we have to do the best we can. And so we need to have a government that listens. The opposition is trying to be helpful and practical and pragmatic. That, we're not there just to make party political points. We are trying to make sure that the government does the right thing at the right time. But it is frustrating because there are times when I do appreciate that it's a very big problem. We've never had to face this before, but we could work together more than we are. And I do think that the government, as I say, in relation to my brief, when I have so many people with so many heartbreaking stories about how desperate they are and how they really need to get home, it's very frustrating when you tell the government about it and they don't seem to be getting their act together fast enough.
Now, speaking of your brief, what did you think of Donald Trump's tweet about Prince Harry and Meghan, saying that the US government would refuse to pay for their security costs now that they have relocated to California? Well,
I don't normally agree with Donald Trump. I think that people know that. But I do
know that.
I I think in this instance, actually, I think that our royal family should be protected by us. And
So the British
um,
taxpayers should pay, even though they're living in California, making millions and millions and millions of pounds from big Hollywood companies.
well, I think that Prince Harry has done a lot of service for our country, yeah, as a prince, but also, frankly, all the time that he spent in Afghanistan. I think that him and his family should be protected by us, and in that way, we guarantee that protection is good. You'll find that retired senior ministers. If you've been a Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, for example, people probably don't know this, but you get protection for the rest of your life. And I think that we ought to be doing that to our royal family as well. And that's my view.
And just finally, of course, a sea change coming for the Labour Party this weekend. Probably really very unfortunate circumstances, given that you're not even able to hold a big event now in person where the new leader will be announced. It's all been having to be done virtually. But of course, everyone predicting that Keir Starmer will be named your new leader on Saturday. Are you expecting to retain a front bench role?
I just don't know. I haven't had any conversations with any of the leadership candidates. Let's see who gets elected, and then I will find out from whoever's elected what it is that they want me to do and how they want me to serve.
Emily Thornberry, Shadow Foreign Secretary, thank you so much for being here.